Right now, as you watch this video, an unsettling silence hangs over Tanzania. A silence filled with fear, pain, and unanswered questions. The aftermath of the recent election has left a deep wound in the heart of the nation, with disturbing reports emerging about mass killings and secret burials that have shaken the conscience of East Africa. But before we continue, kindly like this video so YouTube can recommend it to more people who need to hear the truth about what is happening in Africa today. What began as an election meant to strengthen democracy has instead become a dark chapter in Tanzania's history. On October 29th, millions of Tanzanians went to the polls, expecting their voices to shape the future of their country. However, that hope quickly turned into horror. The main opposition parties had either been weakened or silenced, and the results seemed predetermined. When the official announcement declared President Samia Suluhu Hassan the winner, protests erupted across major cities, particularly in Dar es Salaam, the nation's economic heartbeat. Within hours, peaceful demonstrations turned into scenes of chaos. Security forces were deployed in large numbers, and what followed were images that shocked even those accustomed to the harsh realities of politics in the region. Eyewitness videos that later surfaced showed armed officers firing live bullets and tear gas into crowds of unarmed civilians. Streets that had once been filled with chants of unity were soon stained with blood and covered in smoke. According to opposition leaders, the government responded with extreme force. The largest opposition party, Chadema, claimed that more than 800 people were killed during the crackdown. Some of those who managed to escape described horrific scenes: bodies lying in the open for hours, hospitals overwhelmed, and families unable to locate their missing loved ones. When the government finally lifted the strict curfew and partially restored internet access,
the violence by security forces is still to emerge. It's difficult to know how many people died.
Which had been cut off immediately after the election. Videos began to circulate online, exposing the magnitude of the violence. Those images told a story that official statements tried to suppress. Opposition figures accused the security forces of going beyond violence, of attempting to erase the evidence. Chadema's vice chairman, John Heche, who was arrested before the election and later charged with terrorism, alleged that police were secretly collecting bodies from hospitals and burying them in mass graves. He described a system of fear designed to hide the true cost of the crackdown. So far, the government has made no official comment on the reported death toll. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, in her first remarks after being sworn in, dismissed the accusations and blamed what she called foreign interference for fueling unrest in the country. She claimed that most of the young people arrested during the protests were not Tanzanians, urging security agencies to restore order and investigate the disturbances. But for many Tanzanians, that explanation offered little comfort. On social media, citizens have shared testimonies of missing relatives and unexplained disappearances. The silence from the top has only deepened public anger and fear. International human rights organizations have also taken notice. Human Rights Watch condemned the violent suppression of protesters and demanded accountability from Tanzanian security forces. Their investigators pointed to evidence of point-blank shootings and the use of live ammunition against civilians. The group also criticized the government's internet blackout, saying it prevented crucial information from reaching the world and allowed abuses to continue unchecked. Regional observers have also raised alarms. A preliminary report released by an African regional bloc concluded that the elections fell short of democratic standards. International observers from the United Kingdom, Norway, and Canada echoed similar concerns, describing the reports of mass killings as credible and deeply troubling. Yet, despite growing global pressure, the Tanzanian government has maintained a defensive posture. Restrictions on media coverage remain in place, and several journalists who tried to report on the violence have reportedly gone missing or been detained. This tightening grip on information has raised questions about the state of democracy in one of East Africa's historically stable nations. Political analyst Kanye Mugabani, speaking from Johannesburg, offered a sobering perspective. According to her, what is happening in Tanzania is a tragic reflection of how fragile democracy has become in parts of the continent. "We have seen the bodies on the streets," she said. "The build-up to this election was already marked by intimidation, and the aftermath has exposed how far the government is willing to go to silence dissent." Mugabani described President Hassan's rule as one based on denial and control. "She cannot claim legitimacy when her main opponents were arrested and the opposition was crippled," she added. "The violence we are witnessing is not just a political crisis, it's a moral one. It's a test for Tanzania's soul and for Africa's collective conscience." She also pointed out that this pattern, where disputed elections lead to bloodshed, is becoming a disturbing norm in several African countries. From Kenya to Madagascar, and from Mozambique to the Ivory Coast, the same story repeats. Citizens demanding fair representation and governments responding with suppression. According to Mugabani, what makes Tanzania's case particularly painful is its history. For decades, Tanzania stood as a beacon of stability in East Africa. It was a nation that opened its doors to liberation fighters from across the continent, offering refuge to those fleeing apartheid and colonial rule. Many South African freedom fighters once found a home in Tanzania, especially in Morogoro, where they built schools and training centers. That same nation, known for its hospitality and unity, is now witnessing the erosion of its democratic fabric. She warned that the ongoing violence will have far-reaching effects beyond politics. It threatens to damage the economy, disrupt trade, and deter investors. But more importantly, it risks breaking the social trust that has long held Tanzania together. "A country that silences its citizens cannot build peace," she said. "When young people lose faith in the system, instability becomes inevitable." Even as the situation grows more dire, Mugabani expressed disappointment in the response from the African Union. She criticized the continental body for congratulating President Hassan, despite overwhelming reports of irregularities and violence. "It's a betrayal of the very principles the AU stands for," she lamented. "When leaders who suppress their people are celebrated instead of questioned, it sends a dangerous message across Africa that power matters more than justice." As for what comes next, the analyst called for African nations and the wider international community to take a firm stance. "Neighboring countries and global actors have a duty to act," she said. "They must demand transparency, accountability, and a proper investigation into the deaths." Silence is complicity. She suggested that the African Union should appoint an independent commission to examine the allegations, and that diplomatic pressure, not foreign interference, but African-led accountability, should be used to push for reforms. "This is not about punishing Tanzania," she explained. "It's about saving it from descending into chaos. Tanzania belongs to Africa, and Africa cannot afford to lose another pillar of stability." Within Tanzania, the opposition continues to push back despite arrests and intimidation. Families of the victims are calling for answers, and community leaders have urged the government to allow independent observers to visit suspected burial sites. However, fear remains high, with many citizens avoiding public gatherings or discussions about politics. Internet restrictions, though partially lifted, continue to limit what information can be shared. Many Tanzanians rely on VPNs and underground channels to communicate, making it difficult to get verified data on casualties or arrests. Yet, even in silence, the spirit of resistance endures. The world may not fully understand what Tanzanians are going through right now, but history will remember. Every image, every voice recorded, and every name whispered in grief is part of a larger story. A story of people demanding dignity in the face of oppression. At the heart of it all lies a simple truth. Democracy cannot survive when truth is buried. Whether in Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, or Arusha, the cries of the people cannot be silenced forever. For now, Tanzania stands at a crossroads, between the hope of renewal and the threat of collapse. The path it takes will depend not only on its leaders, but also on the courage of its citizens and the solidarity of its African neighbors. Because when one African nation bleeds, the entire continent feels the pain. And when one nation stands up for justice, all of Africa rises with it. This is Voice of Africa, telling the stories the world must hear, giving voice to the people history must not forget.